What's good, viewers? If you didn't check out my last video, make sure to stop this video, go back and watch that, and then come back and watch this video. Now, as of late, I've been hearing a lot about if LeBron James and the Lakers beat the Brooklyn Nets in a potential finals matchup, he is the greatest of all time. And I'm going to shed my light on what I think about that potentially happening, and if LeBron James being the greatest after that or as a result of that is true. Now, LeBron is currently injured as well as AD, and LeBron is expected to be back before the playoffs, and I would imagine AD as well. Before the injury of LeBron, I had him winning MVP. He was averaging around 25.4 points per game, 7.9 rebounds per game, 7.9 assists per game, on 51% shooting from the field and 36% shooting from three. And at the time, I believe the Lakers were third in the Western Conference. So on that note, he was making a pretty solid case for the MVP. And AD has been out since February with a very mild Achilles injury. It was based off of assuming that the Lakers will be fully healthy going into the playoffs. Now, I have another video that's to the contrary of this video, and if you didn't watch that, make sure to check that out as well. Now, assuming health, the Lakers match up very dominantly against the Nets. Everyone looks at the big three of the Nets, but do not look at the supporting cast of the Nets. And I know the Nets just acquired Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge, but the Lakers will be able to really dominate the Nets' weaknesses because they have an abundance of great bigs that they could use to their advantage against the Nets. The likes of Montrezl Harrell, who was the Sixth Man of the Year last year, and then you have Anthony Davis, who is the second best player on the Lakers and a top 5 player undisputedly, and now the acquisition of Andre Drummond. In a potential matchup, this will be big problems for the Nets. The Lakers, when healthy, are one of the best defending teams in the league, and the Nets are a bottom team of defense. They have improved, but they are still amongst the bottom teams on defense. The quantity of bigs that the Nets have versus what the Lakers have, and the quality of those bigs are a huge difference. Andre Drummond is a top 10 center in the league right now. And Anthony Davis, either way you want to put it, he's the number 1 or number 2 best power forward in the league with Giannis in that conversation. And let's not act like the Lakers don't have the runner-up for last year's Sixth Man of the Year and Dennis Schroeder as well. The Lakers by any means are not as top-heavy as the Brooklyn Nets are, but they have a better supporting cast than the Brooklyn Nets have, and they have better bigs than the Brooklyn Nets do have. And matchup-wise, they will be able to exploit the huge, obvious weaknesses that the Brooklyn Nets have. I feel like the acquisition of Andre Drummond was for the Lakers to try to even the playing field to some degree against the Nets, which to me is pretty even when you look at what the Lakers have and what they don't have, and what the Nets have and what they don't have. Simply meaning that the Nets have James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant. And the Lakers have Andre Drummond, Anthony Davis, and LeBron James. James Harden right now is a point guard, but primarily throughout his career, he played shooting guard. So at his position at shooting guard, he is the number 1 player in his position. Kyrie Irving is a top 5 player right now in his position. And Kevin Durant is a top 3 player right now in his position. Then LeBron James is the number 1 player in his position. Anthony Davis is a top 2 player in his position. And like I said before, Andre Drummond is a top 10 player in his position. But on paper, when you look at the Nets' big 3 versus the Lakers' somewhat big 3, of course, everyone is going to pick the Nets' big 3 over the Lakers' big 3 as far as talent goes. Looking at Schroeder and Harrell, between the two, they average 29 points combined. Schroeder averages 15 points and Montrezl Harrell averages 14 points. Then Kyle Kuzma, who has occasional out-of-body experiences, but he averages 12 points per game. Now, each of these players from their last year averages, there's no big difference. With Montrezl, there's a 4-point difference. He averaged 18 points last year. Dennis Schroeder is a 3-point difference. He averaged 18 points last year. And Kuzma, he averaged around 12 points last year as well. And I know they're filling bigger roles now that LeBron and AD are gone, but I'm taking everything into account. Now, Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge, who everybody has been losing their mind over being on the Nets, they averaged 20 points combined, with Blake Griffin, who's averaging 8 points, and LaMarcus Aldridge, who's averaging 12 points. Then the Nets have one of the best 3-point shooters in the league in Joe Harris, who averages around 14 points per game. What I'm getting at is that Kuzma, Schroeder, and Montrezl Harrell average 41 points combined. and Joe Harris, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Blake Griffin averaged 34 points combined. I would not call the Lakers a big three with the acquisition of Andre Drummond because Andre Drummond is no superstar. It is just based off of what he does that will be able to present a lot of issues for the Brooklyn Nets. And he is the league's best rebounder at that. Capable on defense and everything. The Nets may have a big three and two big names such as LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin. So on paper, they look unbeatable. But in reality, we all know that this is more even than we may think. So to the point of LeBron James being the greatest of all time if the Lakers beat the Nets in a potential finals matchup, for me, I would say no. But looking at it from this perspective that the Nets have 3 Hall of Famers, 3 historically great players, and Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge, that is all that casuals are going to look at in determining why LeBron James is the greatest player of all time as a result of beating the Brooklyn Nets, without looking at the help that he had to defeat the Brooklyn Nets. And when you look at each championship that LeBron has won, it is always going to be, it was LeBron versus this team or LeBron versus that team. It will never be LeBron and that is what comes with the GOAT discussion. Like I said before in the beginning of the video, this is all assuming the health of the Los Angeles Lakers and if the Lakers meet the Nets in the finals. And last thing, what makes this all so funny is that the Nets are not the favorite to win the NBA championship when the Lakers are fully healthy. And that is truly something to behold. And with that said, that's pretty much it. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And thank you for watching.